I'm not sure how far I'm going to keep going with this. I do feel, my spidey senses are telling me that I need to make a firm, permanent public record of what is going on with the sanctuary and the farm it's sitting on and the whole mess with Michelle. I'm angry. I'll tell you that much. I'm deeply, deeply angry. I'm going to be okay, and the sanctuary is going to be okay. This is not an end of the world scenario for us. I don't think there's stuff happening that I'm not talking about, but I am going to kind of change the nature of my YouTube channel, and I've kind of already changed my username back on this to just reflect me and not the sanctuary at this time. I will tell you that everything's fine with the animals. They're not suffering in any way. And the long-term goals are still in place, but the complication that we hit just from I don't want to use the word stupidity too much. I've already used it a lot, but I just can't get my head around the lack of cognitive function that has affected this situation, and how it really seems like I'm dealing with the invasion of the body snatchers, and that the person that I knew and spent almost every minute of every day with since 2019, it just seems like there's just somebody else that's taken over the brain of this person. And this is one way I want to demonstrate it, but understand that this is just a small demonstration. It's just something concrete that I can show. This is a conversation that happened in Messenger. And this is on December the 2nd. It's even after the big explosion where he ignored me and I was trying to get information from him about how we were going to proceed. I still thought we were going to be working together to try to sort the problems that we were having. The investors had said they didn't want to deal with Michelle because he's too unreliable. He just would not. He doesn't know how to adult. He doesn't know how to interact with grown-ups, and he doesn't know how to interact in a business situation. And instead of admitting that he doesn't understand how to do that, he basically tried to extort them in an email, which came after this. But it just, we're going to see some of that email. But this is the conversation that he and I were having in private just before that email where he was trying to extort them for money. You need to realize that I am in no way obstructing your nonprofit to receive donation and setting up a lease, nor does I obstruct into selling an acre if it followed legal channels, and I got a right to review and accept myself the contracts. What seems to be worrying the investor here is that his preferred process, which include the first donating to the nonprofit and then receiving an acre as a gift, I, by this nature, seem to depend on the trust that money will not leave his hand in an unrecoverable way without receiving anything, and that, I regret, is not coming from me being rightfully included in the loop, but of the fragility of the legal process itself. Now, he's still not right, okay? And this is how problems start. This is how troubles start. Even though we had tried, and I had tried to explain to him that the investors were not giving a donation to the nonprofit. That's not what was happening. A donation was coming into the nonprofit, but it wasn't from them, and there was no gift in consideration being exchanged there. I have all of this detailed in a 5-part series called Autopsy of a Dead Dream, where I explain a little more about what was going on, but Michelle wasn't understanding all of it, but you can clearly see that he was getting some of it. He understood here that nobody was asking for his shares. He didn't say anything about the shares. He didn't say anything about any of that. He says he's not going to block us. He can't block the donation from receiving a donation. And he wasn't going to block the nonprofit from leasing the farm. He had no problem with the nonprofit then turning around and leasing the farm. And he doesn't object to selling an acre if it follows legal channels, and he wanted the right to review and accept himself the contracts. Nobody ever said he couldn't. And you'll see that I reassure him of that immediately below. That's all fine. It does need to follow legal channels. That's the whole reason we were trying to get it all hashed out. It was going to follow. I have no problem with his understanding of it right there. And he didn't seem to have a problem either. The problem, the misunderstanding was only a simple thing. It's that he thought the investors were going to be donating to the nonprofit, and they were not. That was not what was happening, but it didn't matter because, we could have explained that later. And then he was talking about the fact that some of this has to be done on good faith, and that the investors were worried about, bad faith actors and them not, anyway, just you can read it. You can understand. But also the important thing, observe the voice, okay? Michel is French. He's very, very French. And he's almost fluent in English. But he's not quite fluent in English. And I see the French sentence structure here. And I know his way of talking. I look at this and it sounds like Michel. And I can understand it. I understand the points he was making. I recognize the syntax, the cadence of his words, everything. It sounds right. It sounds like Michel just not quite being clear on some of the details, but yet not completely off. It still sounded like he was willing to play ball. Okay, in this, it sounded like he was willing to consider the plan and what we were intending to do. And here in my response back to him, I don't tackle his misunderstanding about the donation because that's not important at this stage. What I did do was jump right in and I said, I told you that nobody suggested that you don't have the right to review and accept the contract. I simply need to be able to physically sign the contract because you are not here to do it. I clearly stated, no money will change hands until I have that right to sign, until I have power of attorney. But nobody said that I can't show you the contract beforehand and get your approval on it. So I was telling him, that's fine. Everything you're saying is fine. If you want to be able to look at the contracts, nobody's cutting you out of that loop. Nobody is saying you can't or that you can't be part of the process, but you're not here to sign. I need to have power of attorney to sign that acre over because you're not here to do it, and nobody trusts that you're going to do what you say you're going to do in order to make that happen. So, that donation is not coming in until we get that sorted. But then again, nothing is going to be signed over. No acre is going to be signed over until that money has been donated and these debts paid so that we are free and clear to sign over the acre. So it seemed like we were having an okay conversation, and it seemed like he understood. And then it went on to a point where he started complaining about an attack on social media. And this was before anything was put on social media that named him or that went after him. This was before the narcissist post and all of that. This was before that. There had been nothing going on. And this is actually what prompted me to start making a record of this on social media, because he was being really sneaky about this. We were being upfront, totally transparent, but Michel was being really sneaky about it, and he was saying things that made me think that he didn't really understand. He was disappearing for days at a time, not being available to discuss things with me, flat out refusing to discuss anything with the investors. I mean, it had just reached the point of ridiculous, and that's why they said they didn't want to deal with him. So anyway, you can see that he started talking about he was going to make a proposal, and I told him, in one of those messages that came right after this, you're going to be lucky if they even open your email at this point. They're not interested in a negotiation with you at this point, Michel. They're not interested in that. They all they want to hear from you is yes or no. Are you gonna sign over power of attorney to let us move forward and unstick this SRL so that we can do away with the cessation of business and I can move to save our assets. Now, also remember that at this point, he was still going to remain on as a 50% partner. Nobody was taking his shares. Nobody wanted his shares. He was going to remain on as a 50% partner and would then be eligible and would absolutely receive 50% of the profits that came in on this down the road. So it wasn't just his initial investment that he would be recovering. It would be he would start to make a profit at that point. Immediately after that, we jump to his email, in which he starts, criticizing the American style way of pushing people to sign quickly. No, this had been weeks into the process by now. This had been a couple of weeks. This was not an immediate way of signing. Nobody was pushing him to sign right now or whatever. We'd been discussing this for a while. And then he says there's no legal or moral basis for asking me to donate his investment or to give up shares. Was there any conversation about him giving up the shares in the discussion previous to this? Nothing was discussed. This is somebody else, guys. Now, I understand that he uses AI to compose, but this is somebody else. Whoever is dictating the prompt for this AI, this is not Michelle. Or at least it's a different personality of Michelle, because they don't have the same understanding that he had when he was talking to me in Messenger. Whoever is dictating this is completely clueless. They don't have any idea whatsoever is going on. So this is why I talk about invasion of the body snatchers. I can absolutely believe that Michelle put somebody else up to doing this for him, because that's what he always did to me. He always shoved me out front, made me do all the talking, made me do, the negotiation and whatnot. He wouldn't do it. So I have no doubt that I was talking to Stella or to the ho-ho or somebody else here. But, he goes on and he talks about everything you're offering me is verbal in price and unsecured. And what you're asking from me is definitive and irreversible. No, it wasn't. We were asking for temporary limited power of attorney so I could sign. And whoever was dictating this to the AI and had inputted this information didn't understand that at all. Then he goes on to throw us all a curveball and say that he is not willing to work with the company that belongs to the investors. And now is where the extortion starts, and he starts talking about he must be paid this and it must be this way and it must be that. I agree that if he were to be paid, the method he's recommending is correct through an escrow. But that was not the deal we had discussed only minutes before in Messenger, minutes, an hour, or something like that. We had discussed a completely different scenario. This is not Michelle inputting this. I don't know why. This is craziness. This is insanity. This is what has screwed him up, and this is what's made him lose everything. Because after seeing this language in this email, there is no way under the sun that the investor is ever going to take anything he says seriously again. So when he goes on in the PS to rip me about this and that and the other in front of the investor, I feel like that was tacked on. And maybe he wrote that part, maybe he didn't. But nobody's going to pay attention to what he said about me personally, because his credibility is already shot in this first part by talking about stuff that nobody ever said to him. He's making it up as he goes, or Stella was making it up as she went. Something. This was absolutely not the situation that we were discussing, and it cost him everything, because I have to foreclose. I don't have a choice. And I can't, this month I can't buy my medicine, my cardiac medicine, because I'm having to pay for attorneys and having to do all of this. I've gotten donations for dog food that are going to get me through, a little further into the month. And then I have some regular donations that come in at the end of the month. But I got nothing. I couldn't, like I said, I could not even afford my cardiac medicine this month, because I have to use that money to pay for an attorney to protect my interest in this foreclosure deal and to possibly look for a way I mean, this is proof of mental incapacity here. This is proof of somebody not cognitively functioning properly and correctly. So there may be some grounds to remove him from the SRL based on diminished mental capacity. So, and of course, abandonment. He's not here to fulfill his obligation. So anyway, this is, it's pretty sad. And I hate that it came to this, but it is what it is.